Hey there, ghosts and ghouls. I am your host, Sarah, and today we're talking about witches. Witches in history, facts about witches, witches in peril, and stay tuned for the end where I tell you a super spooky story about witches that you won't find anywhere else on YouTube. This video was requested by one of my lovely longtime viewers, so thank you for this request, Sarah. And don't forget, guys and gals, if you want to request a video of any paranormal kind, you can contact me by way of any of my social media. I look forward to hearing your requests. Now, if you're not familiar with the infamous Salem witch trials, then it may come as a shock to you that Colonial Massachusetts once held a series of court cases on grounds of practicing witchcraft. The witch trials began in 1692, lasted for around a year, and by the end, 20 people, men, women, and even children included, lost their lives. Now compare that to somewhere between 70 and 100,000 people, because that's how many people were estimated to have been put to death between the years of 1400 and 1700. And yes, that was for witchcraft. There are a lot of videos, books, films, and legends out there about the Salem witch trials, and most people know the story. However, most people might not know that this isn't the only significant witch story in history, and it definitely isn't even the worst in terms of witch hunting. Apparently, witch hunting was all the rage back in the 12 and 1300s in Europe, and it seems that everyone and their mother was itching to smite a witch. Why, you ask? Well, the definitive answer to that is a bit elusive, and it might change depending on your source or however far back in history you're willing to dig. For now, we'll dig as far as we can in an attempt to understand one of the most frightening and catastrophic plights in world history. The Christian dualistic or Gnostic revival of Southern Europe incited an attack by Pope Innocent III in 1208. It was considered heresy and not true Christianity to theorize that there was a war between God and the devil, and that both were supernatural deities in their own right. This is one piece of the puzzle that may have perpetuated a figurative line drawn in the sand where you're either on one side or the other, Christian or Satanist. This could help explain why any minuscule oddity was perceived as evil. The surge of Catharism and subsequent persecution led its followers to try and escape their certain fate, and soon Germany was full of heretic migrants. Said persecution created not only hysteria, but false positive proof of satanic, ritualistic worshippers. Maybe it was because of the abuse, or maybe there was a shred of truth lost in translation, but the accused began admitting to things. Strange things. Things like spellcasting, blood and sex magic pacts with demons, bestiality, personal experiences with Satan himself, child and other human sacrifices, and the ability to control natural elements, just to name a few. Were these claims true? We'll never know, but these events spawn the ideas and details on which witchcraft is built. I know some of you might be thinking that most witchcraft concepts have to be much older because, for one, alchemy in one form or another predates the Dark Ages, and witches are mentioned in the Bible. And that's true, but all of these events in the Dark Ages led up to one very pivotal point in time for witches: the publication of the Hammer of Witches, written by two friars, Heinrich Kramer and Jacob Sprenger, and revised 13 times. The Hammer of Witches advised it was a Christian's duty to hunt down and kill all witches. Enter the slaughter of witches. By 1515, authorities in one Switzerland city had burned nearly 500 accused witches at the stake. Almost 10 years later, Como, Italy, had executed 1,000. In France, 1571, judges called for the elimination of over 100,000 witches who were said to have been roaming the country. Altogether, between the years 15 and 1600, 50 to 80,000 alleged witches were put to death across Europe, and 80% were said to have been female. Germany boasted a 26,000 kill count, while France claimed about 10. Ireland executed only 4 people. Scotland, however, provided the largest witch hunt in British history, according to historians. Terrible storms were said to have interrupted Anne of Denmark's journey to Scotland to wed King James in 1589, so she turned back, unable to finish the trip. Several Danish women claiming to be witches took the blame for the storm. Since the witch hunting craze was sweeping Denmark, King James reconsidered his once possibly indifferent stance on witchcraft and began to see it as an important issue. When he returned home to Scotland, he authorized the torture and murder of suspected witches, and a year later published a very anti-witchcraft manifesto of sorts. The Salem witch trials were indeed frightening and cruel, but dwarfed in comparison to other witch hunt events, especially those which may have given way for more persecution and spawned more chaos across history and continents. Of course, witch hunting no longer exists in our modern times, but the term witch attracts a negative connotation that most non-witchy people are inherently fearful of. There are, of course, many more stories of the persecution of witches throughout history, but let's move on to something a little more lighthearted. Do you remember that scene from Hocus Pocus where Bette Midler's character bewitches the town folk to make them dance themselves to death? That actually kind of happened once in Strasbourg in 1518. Dreadful as it was, I cannot help but laugh at this story. Known as the Dancing Plague of 1518, the incident began with one woman, Mrs. Trophy, who took to the streets one hot July day and began to dance like her life depended on it. After almost a week of non-stop crazy dancing, 34 people had joined her, and after about 4 weeks, Mrs. Trophy had picked up another 400 dancers. Just random people dancing. Now, the human body has been known to be a bit of a dancing machine from time to time, mine included, but much to the 1518 dancers' chagrin, it isn't designed to dance that much. Soon after this craze began, people started dropping like flies, with strokes, heat exhaustion, and heart attacks. It is completely unknown as to why this happened, but at the time of the events, physicians were leaning toward witchcraft. Some also claim that it could be a natural disease caused by hot blood, whatever that means. Naturally, they did the only thing they could, which was build a wooden stage and encourage even more dancing. Somehow they got it in their heads that if they hired musicians to keep the music going 24/7, the disease would eventually work itself out and everything would be okay. Well, nothing was okay, and a lot of people died, and still to this day there isn't much of a real explanation for what caused the dancing plague. It's possible that the same thing potentially responsible for the strange behavior also seen in the Salem Witch Trial Chronicles could have played a role in the dancing plague. With its hallucinogenic properties and the fact that it was likely being accidentally ground up into their main food source, rye, ergo has been deemed as the most likely explanation for a lot of weird things in history. This one frightens me the most because if you really think about it, any and everyone who had an enemy could have been subject to this fate. This is the frightening story of the demonic possessions of Loudon, France, 1634, the story of a man accused of practicing black magic and witchery and making deals with the devil. In the end, he was tortured till his death simply because he was disliked by his peers. Parish priest Urbain Grandier was a well-educated, handsome, and wealthy man. He also held a high seat in local politics in a small town near Poitiers, France. His fate began to unravel when 2 nuns accused him of some form of supernatural assault. The nuns claimed that they became possessed as a result of Grandier commanding demons to defile them. Whether or not the nuns were feigning demonic possessions or actually were possessed is still unknown, of course. Historians, however, claim that Grandier had 2 enemies in high places. One, Father Manon, and the other, Father Pierre Barret, who were adamant about ridding their parish of Grandier. The 2 began performing exorcisms on the nuns, and the nuns put on a show. Grandier was eventually accused of witchcraft, arrested, and put through extreme torture while in jail. Nevertheless, he maintained his innocence, but he still burned at the stake on August 18th, 1634. Now for the story you won't hear anywhere else on YouTube. Not many people from around my hometown have YouTube channels, but I do, so I'll tell you what I know. Keep in mind that stories like this, sometimes considered urban legends, are often passed around for years, distorted, told differently, or sometimes it's hearsay. But that's kind of part of what makes them fun. If at any point in the future I gather more information or stories, I will gladly update you and possibly even make another video on this topic. Having said that, let's get to the fun part. Growing up, I heard stories about Black Mountain in Round County, Kentucky, near Moorhead and near Moorhead State University, and about the alleged witches hiding in the woods. These weren't your average pagan witches. These witches were something much darker, and there were endless rumors about sacrifices and kidnappings. For the most part, it was simply a scary story told to entertain bored local children, and everyone knew about it, but nobody took it seriously. As I grew up, I even actually forgot about Black Mountain, maybe because of the disconnection of hearing about it, but never actually seeing it for myself. Sometime in my early 20s, I was working for a tax company where my partner and I would research delinquent taxes and then travel to the locations to photograph the properties. One day we found ourselves lost in a heavily wooded area atop a huge mountain somewhere in Round County. We drove in circles for maybe an hour without ever being able to completely figure out where we were or how exactly we got lost. The area was beautiful but strange. I remember an eerie feeling coming over me as I pulled off the side of the road to check a map. This was a long time before Google Maps and GPS existed. It was like something was staring at me, and it scared me so bad I locked my doors. That night after work, I talked to my mom on the phone and told her how peculiar the experience was and roughly where we had found ourselves lost in the middle of nowhere. And then she told me, "You must have been on Clack Mountain." All the stories from my childhood resurfaced in my memory, and I started to obsess about investigating the area for answers. I talked to my friend, the lady who organized the paranormal team, I've mentioned her before, about the experience, and she said, "Well, I've got a story or two about Clack Mountain that you might want to hear." She said when she was in college at MSU, her and some friends heard rumors about the mountain. They decided to go and snoop around one night and subsequently stumbled upon some kind of ceremony. She said her and her friends saw dozens of people in a clearing back in the woods dancing naked around a fire. They quickly left the area and returned back to their respective homes, and they never went back again. Not because they were frightened, but because they didn't know what to think or what to expect. I started investigating. After asking around, I heard a lot of good stories, though unfortunately much of it can't be verified. One of the stories I heard claimed the people living in the mountain weren't just witches, they were a satanic witch cult, complete with crazy cult leader. People used to say that this man would dress in black mass attire, hide in the woods, and wait for a car to pass so that he could accost them in the narrow one lane and scare the devil out of them. Other people said that all of the coven took part in this pastime, and some variations even claimed that they never actually even wore clothes, save for black robes. Something I even witnessed myself, although I had no idea what they meant or what purpose they were intended to serve, was a significant number of symbols painted on rocks, pavement of the road itself, old barns, sheds, trees, so forth. Most people agreed that these symbols were satanic in nature, but if I'm being honest, they all looked a bit contrived to me, almost as if they were notebook doodles, designed specifically by each person who painted them. My friend and I decided that at some point we needed to take yet another tour of Clack Mountain, but this time do it together for the sole purpose of snooping. So one night around midnight, we did just that. We didn't actually expect anything to happen, but something did. Being so far away from any major cities, as most of eastern Kentucky is, the thin one-lane road up Clack Mountain was pitch black dark around the beams of my friend's van headlights. It was spooky, but I was trying to remain objective. My friend had just bought the van, and it was in great mechanical shape. No major issues, no engine problems. Everything was perfectly sound. We were clearing the top of the mountain, drawing closer to the rundown neighborhood said to house the alleged witches, and something happened. The engine died. Everything on the van died. Remember, it's pitch black dark out, no street lights, no lights from town, not even moonlight was lighting the road ahead of us, and now suddenly we don't even have headlights. My first thought was that my friend was pranking me, so half smirking, I asked her, "You're messing with me, right? This is a prank, right?" She was frantic by this point, trying repeatedly to turn the engine over and start the van back up. Just like those scenes in a horror movie. In all honesty, I guess it's possible she could have been messing with me, but judging by her panic, it really didn't look like a prank at all. A few frightening minutes in complete total darkness passed by very slowly, and eventually the van started right up like nothing had ever happened. We hurried and got off of the hill, and surprisingly, we didn't get lost like I did the first time I was ever up there. I still have no idea what happened that night or what's really going on atop Clack Mountain. All I really do know is that there are more strange things back home in eastern Kentucky than you would ever imagine. So, ghosts and ghouls, what did you think of the video? Let me know in the comments or by way of social media. And also let me know if you would be interested in hearing about another, even creepier place in eastern Kentucky. That's all for now. Join me next week as we delve into another realm of the supernatural. And in the meantime, don't forget to check out my other social media accounts. I post a ton of extra content on the Paranormally Correct Facebook page, sometimes deleted scenes, sometimes bonus videos. I do live videos because I love being able to interact with you in real time. I'm also doing something really special for you all right now on the Facebook page. I'm posting complete chapters of my book, The Adaption, so you can read the entire thing there for free. All you have to do is like and follow the Facebook page. You can also send me video requests by simply submitting it here in the comment section or by sending it through any of my social media direct messaging. Thank you for watching. I'll see you soon.